It's Thursday, August 13th, 2009, and it's got to be 4:20 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers, and welcome to the podcast. Before we get started here, I just have to say a little something about Representative Tommy Benton of Georgia. Since we've been covering this story of the caning for potheads representative there on July 29th, the story has spread like wildfire. We issued an official press release today and featured the story here and on the NORML front page just yesterday. And already the story has been covered from the Libertarian Reason blog to the Liberal Talk Left blog. However, I am deeply disturbed at some of the nearly 250 comments the story has gotten over at the NORML blog. There are threats of assassinating, shooting, caning, and kicking the ass of Representative Benton, as well as comparisons to Adolf Hitler. Some have even threatened his wife, children, and family dog, and published Representative Benton's home telephone number, which I've scrubbed. Stop it. Rise above the level of people like Representative Benton. Violence and threats of violence not only solve nothing and hurt our movement, but they may be actionable criminal acts. Look, I understand the feelings of anger and the desire for vengeance. For far too long, our people have been intimidated, harassed, threatened, assaulted, imprisoned, and killed for our interaction with a plant. Far too many homes have been burst into by armor-clad, assault weapon-armed police. Our people have had our careers shattered, education thwarted, children taken, health care denied, civil rights abrogated, dogs murdered, property stolen and destroyed, and voting rights erased in this land of the free because we like to use the hemp plant in the same way this country's founders did. Believe me, I report stories and read heartbreaking personal emails like this every day. I considered deleting these comments, but I have not, and maybe my superiors will overrule me, because I do think they tap into a strong current of we're mad as hell and we're not going to take this anymore that runs through the cannabis community. Plus, I'm a strong advocate of free speech on our forums. But realize that this kind of reaction only empowers Representative Benton within his community of hateful anti-pot zealots. See, he'll crow to fellow prohibitionists, smoking turns you into a raving violent psycho. We're better than that. Cannabis is supposed to be the peaceful plant. Do not sink to this man's level. Fighting fire with fire only burns down everyone's house, and an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Fight this man with peace, education, and voting for his opponents in the primary or general election. Now, coming up on today's Daily Audio Stash, we begin with your hemp headlines, including reporting from Eugene Davidovich in San Diego County, California, with tales of police parking their cars outside of dispensaries to intimidate and harass patients. A new study shows alcohol can seriously increase the risk of oral cancer. Guess what doesn't? A story from my neck of the woods, south of Portland, in the bedroom community of Tigard, where police were instigating a sex-for-weed prostitution sting. And some words about the Seattle Hemp Fest from Seattle's The Stranger newspaper that I felt I really needed to reply to. We're taking a break from our Southern California scene. Terry Joyce is feeling a little under the weather, so I'm going to go to Colorado and speak with Laura Creho from Colorado 420 on the tale of Jason Love, a patient in Colorado who just recently won acquittal in court for having more marijuana and plants than the state law allows. Our Daily Toker Tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, features the Bo Weevils with their song Chillin' Rooms for Rockin' Thursday. And in our second interview segment, Cannabis Conversations, we sit down with Dr. Harry Levine from Queens College in New York City and his recent paper on how New York City still remains the arrest capital of the world for marijuana possession, even though marijuana possession is decriminalized in the state of New York. Wonder how they're doing it? Check out the interview at the end of the show. All that and more coming up on your NORML Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. Eugene Davidovich reports, cops parking cars outside San Diego collectives to intimidate patients. This week brings more harassment to collectives and patients in San Diego by our local law enforcement. There are now reports from patients that police officers are parking their squad cars outside of collectives to intimidate the members as they go inside to get their medication. This, just weeks after Pierre Tiberius Ugla, aka San Diego Green RX detective Mike Mendez, was caught trying to join 2 collectives in town, and months after Jamie Conlon, aka San Diego Green RX detective Scott Henderson, went to a local doctor and lied to obtain a valid recommendation for medical cannabis, then joined all the collectives he could reach, listed on the California NORML website. All this for Operation Green RX, the intent to target and eliminate all medical cannabis-related activity in San Diego, as well as help overturn Proposition 215, voted in by the people of California. Operation Green RX was organized by detectives from the San Diego Police Department's Narcotics Task Force in collaboration with the District Attorney's Office and has been ongoing under one name or another for years in order to thwart the will of the people. In this operation, detectives go to local doctors, lie about their symptoms, conditions, and identities to obtain recommendations for medical cannabis. With these recommendations in hand, detectives join as many of the collectives and cooperatives they can. The operation usually includes the detectives phoning collectives, providing all pertinent information to prove their status as legitimate patients, and then requesting to join each individual collective. Keep in mind these collectives and their existence are legal under California law. The undercover officers proceed to request deliveries, make contributions, or pick up medicine from the collectives themselves. Last November, the Operation Green RX team rented and occupied a house in Pacific Beach for this purpose. I wonder how much that cost the taxpayers. Then, 3 months later, raided over 15 houses, sticking true to their motto of, "Let the courts sort it out." At more cost, I might add. please visit Eugene's blog at www.operationgreenrx.blogspot.com to follow this case. These rogue cops and DAs must be forced to obey the will of California voters who approved Prop 215 and who overwhelmingly support access to medical marijuana. Alcohol blamed for 26% increase in oral cancer. From the BBC News. Alcohol is largely to blame for an alarming rise in the rate of oral cancers among men and women in their 40s, say experts. Numbers of cancers of the lip, mouth, tongue, and throat in this age group have risen by 26% in the past decade. Alcohol consumption has doubled since the 1950s and is the most likely culprit, alongside smoking, says Cancer Research UK. Each year in the UK, around 1,800 people die from the disease. There are 5,000 newly diagnosed cases per year. The charity's health information manager, Hazel Nunn, said, quote, "These latest figures are really alarming. Around 3/4 of oral cancers are thought to be caused by smoking and drinking alcohol. Tobacco is by far the main risk factor for oral cancer, so it's important that we keep encouraging people to give up and think about new ways to stop people from taking it up in the first place." End quote. But you know what doesn't lead to an increase in oral cancer? Wait for it. Seattle, Washington. The use of marijuana, even long-term, is not associated with an increased risk of developing oral cancer, according to the results of a large population-based study published in the June issue of the journal Cancer Research. Researchers found, quote, "no association," end quote, between marijuana use and the incidence of oral squamous cell carcinoma, quote, "regardless of how long, how much, or how often a person has used marijuana," end quote, according to a press release issued this week by the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle, which conducted the study. Tigard, Oregon cops used marijuana for sex prostitution sting. From the Willamette Week. On April 13th this year, Sean Walsh clicked into Casual Encounters on Craigslist and found this personal ad. Quote, "Tuesday is my Friday. Wanna smoke and wink?" End quote. The ad said a 23-year-old woman had posted it. Walsh clicked on the link and read more. Quote, "Tuesday is my last day at work this week and I want to party on Tuesday night. I'm a hot blonde who has all the right moves." End quote. The ad promised to trade those moves to anyone who could offer some 420, or marijuana. Walsh wrote back from his Hotmail account, quote, "Hi, how you doing? My name is Sean. I have some bomb 420 and would like to share it with you tomorrow night." End quote. They arranged to meet at 11 p.m. Tuesday, April 14th, at an address on Southwest Hermosa Way in Tigard. Walsh made the half-hour drive from his home in Clackamas County west to Washington County. When Walsh pulled his black Chevy pickup onto suburban Hermosa Way, he was surrounded by Tigard police. Officer Otis Rollins, who had placed the Craigslist ad and written the emails, asked Walsh to step out of his truck. Walsh had 3.5 grams of weed in his pocket, normally enough to earn him nothing more than a ticket. But because he'd agreed to trade drugs for sex, the cops charged Walsh with misdemeanor prostitution and delivery of drugs, a felony, and booked him into the Washington County Jail. But Walsh insists he was just looking for a good time. Tigard is a conservative, upscale bedroom community just south of Portland. Coincidentally, I used to live blocks away from Tigard, and now I've moved near 82nd Avenue in Portland, the Avenue of Roses, or as I call it, the Avenue of Hoses, for its reputation as the primary hose stroll in the city. Personally, as George Carlin once remarked, I don't see why selling is okay, sex is okay, but selling sex is not okay. I would just prefer that prostitution were made legal, taxed, and regulated like it is in the Netherlands or Germany or Nevada or Rhode Island. Once again, prohibition of victimless transactions between consenting adults does not eliminate the demand. It just criminalizes the supply and creates more public nuisance. Now, strong disclaimer, this isn't a normal position. This is a radical Russ opinion. One thing I have noticed, though, is that nobody is offering sex over the internet in trade for alcohol or tobacco. In a world where marijuana is a legal product, there is no incentive for police agencies to waste taxpayer dollars in a weed for sex sting. And it was a waste. The Washington County prosecutor made them stop the sting in May because they were producing cases they couldn't prosecute, because they could not prove the men intended to engage in a prostitution transaction. The Stranger. A few words about HempFest. Dominic Holden is a writer for the Seattle Stranger and a former director at HempFest and associated as a director with Washington NORML. And this week he opines on the HempFest event. HempFest, which pioneered the movement in these parts, is regressive and archaic. Tie-dyes hang from the stages, and reggae rock fusion blares from the amplifiers. There's nothing advantageous about sticking a pressing political issue in a countercultural time warp, and there's nothing attractive about a rally that looks more interested in satisfying its own indulgences than effectively advocating for political reform. As it is now, HempFest drives away unknown numbers of would-be supporters, politically engaged city folk. Here's what HempFest can do to avoid squandering its potential. Lose the cultural baggage. Hippies are the stigma of the pot movement. There's nothing wrong with hippies, mind you, and HempFest itself is wonderful. I was a director and permit holder for many years, fighting from the inside for HempFest to ditch the hippie accessories. But countercultural celebrations and drug legalization advocacy are mutually undermining ambitions. In truth, the crowd at HempFest is mostly mainstream folks, freakishly hot guys without shirts, and perky little emo kids. But cliched hippie artifacts and music, chosen by the organizers, make people who don't identify with a tiny cultural niche want to run screaming. HempFest doesn't need to lose the hippie vibe any more than gay pride parades need to lose the drag queens, any more than God and country festivals need to lose the Confederate flags, any more than block parties need to lose the baggy pants teenagers, any more than DC cocktail parties need to lose the Brooks Brothers stick-up-the-ass wasps. HempFest is what it is. 150,000 or so marijuana aficionados peacefully gathering to smoke pot, listen to music and speakers, maybe buy a piece of glass or a t-shirt. The magnitude of the event is enough of a political statement. As we face global warming, corporate rule, rising obesity, pharmaceutical stupor, and digital overload, I look back and realize the hippies were right about sustainability, local control, organic diet, herbal medicine, and music and art. Those ethics are worth celebrating. The sad thing is that because of marijuana's illegality, only those with true dedication and nothing to lose could come out of that cannabis closet and make something like HempFest happen. Because hippies in tie-dye weren't shackled by corporate drug tests for employment and would lose no face in their community by openly supporting marijuana, they are the ones who became the standard bearers for legalization. But now that the mainstream wants to legally enjoy 420, you want the tie-dyed hippies to get in the back of the bus? We've discussed this before, Dom, and we do have some similar personal views regarding HempFest. I, too, recoil from the scent of patchouli and body odor, the mundanity of drum circles and reggae, and the freakishly pierced, tattooed, and dreadlocked. Then I get on stage to speak and look over the mass of humanity on the waterfront, all sharing one dream, legalized cannabis and hemp, and find that the positive far outweighs the negative at HempFest. Yes, the marketing could be tweaked. The speakers could be more well-known. But all in all, 150,000 people gathered for 2 days smoking pot without any major incident gives lie to the reefer madness about amotivation and criminality among cannabis consumers. Until the short-haired, polo shirt, respectable job mainstream pot smokers put on an event that attracts 150,000, let HempFest be HempFest. It's a party, y'all. Don't try to read too much into it. Besides, if you want a serious, button-down political examination of marijuana policy, there's always the NORML National Conference in San Francisco, September 24th through 26th, chock full of doctors, lawyers, political strategists, media personalities, professional athletes, researchers, and celebrities. And very little tie-dye.
If you want to win people over, you can't just drone on like Ben Stein. You've got to have a little more showmanship. Here, watch.
NORMLCon 2009, Yes We Cannabis, September 24th through 26th, 2009, in San Francisco, California.
The war on drugs has been an utter failure, and I think that we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
President Obama was right in 2004, and 5 years later, the American people agree.
I think it's time for debate, and I think that we ought to study very carefully on what other countries are doing that have legalized marijuana.
At our 38th annual conference, you'll learn all the facts you need in the debate to legalize marijuana.
As regards to legalization, it's not in the president's vocabulary and it's not in mine.
We're working hard to make sure legalization is in the drug czar's vocabulary.
Whether legalizing marijuana would improve the economy, the answer is no. I don't think that is a good strategy.
There's nothing funny about legalization, Mr. President, or waiting until the last minute to book your trip to NORMLCon 2009. Early bird registration rates apply until August. Registration, sponsorships, and vending information is available at norml.org or by calling 888-67-NORML. Much of the fight to end adult marijuana prohibition takes place in the courts, where we have these decisions that help us to clarify what is and is not legal in the medical marijuana states. And joining us now to talk about one such case is Laura Creho from Colorado420.com. Laura, welcome to the Stash.
Hi, Russ.
Well, this case we've got, you'd emailed me about this, and it was about a man by the name of Jason Love, and he was arrested and charged with some felonies in the state of Colorado, and I was wondering if you could just tell our listeners a little bit about his case.
Well, Jason's a medical marijuana patient in Colorado. He was injured in a skiing accident in 2004. He was at a local ski area, and a snowboarder came out of nowhere and flew into his back while he was waiting at a lift line.
Ooh.
And, so it wasn't even Jason's fault, the accident was. And it messed up his back pretty bad. He can walk, but he has a hard time with it, so he uses a wheelchair a lot, and he takes morphine and OxyContin and other narcotics and nerve blockers for his chronic pain. He became part of Colorado's medical marijuana registry, I believe in 2005, and started using cannabis as medicine, and he found he was doing what he called trichome therapy or keef therapy, where he would take the trichome crystals off of the cannabis buds and use that to make his canna butter out of, and use that to make food and ingest his medicine like that. He said that he testified in court that if he did that in the morning and had some food with cannabis in it in the morning, that would give him about 8 to 10 hours of pain relief throughout the day. In addition to the narcotics that he was taking, he never did stop taking the morphine and whatnot, but it allowed him to take it at a lower dose, so that he didn't have the side effects that were associated with the pharmaceutical drugs.
Okay.
So he was arrested in Boulder County on what he says was a confidential informant. What the district attorney said was an anonymous tip that he was growing cannabis in his house. And the police came over and raided his house. They were not aware that he was a medical marijuana patient when they raided his house. Once they came over and he presented them with his medical marijuana ID card, they left him with 6 plants and 2 ounces that are specifically allowed under the Colorado Constitution, Article 18, Section 14, which is Colorado's medical marijuana law. And but his physician had recommended to him that he could use larger amounts of cannabis because he was using and ingesting it. You know, as most people that know anything about medical cannabis, that if you're ingesting it, you do need greater quantities of it than if you are smoking it or vaporizing it. So his physician physician had written him a recommendation to the Board of Health that he be allowed to have 15 ounces a month of cannabis, which was Jason's suggestion to the doctor. The doctor didn't really know what to write. And what they ended up arresting Jason for was possession of more than 8 ounces, which is a felony in Colorado, and it weighed out, they took everything and weighed it out to 34 ounces of cannabis. So that's what they were charging him, was having more that was medically necessary.
Right.
That was the burden that the district attorney was put on, was to say that Jason had more that was medically necessary, and they did not present any evidence at all to that effect. So, and I don't think that they could find a doctor that would say that it wasn't medically necessary for him to have that much. So the jury only deliberated for a couple hours, and it didn't take them long to come to the verdict. We were able to talk to the jury foreman afterwards about the 2 not guilty verdicts. The other charge that they charged him with was marijuana concentrate, which is usually considered hashish or something similar to that, but what they tried to make a case for was that it was the trichomes, the keef, was going to be considered marijuana concentrate. So the jury found him not guilty on both charges, and the jury foreman had said that what it came down to was them reading the law, the Article 18, Section 14 of the Colorado Constitution, which says that you can have any amount that is medically necessary, and it doesn't specify amount. So according to the foreman, he said Jason could have had a ton, and they would have acquitted him, because that's the way the law is written.
That's an interesting case there. Now, this is at the trial level, right? There's a trial court that we're talking about?
This was a criminal trial, yes.
Okay. So, we're not certain whether does this set any sort of precedent in Colorado for other people, but at least it takes care of Jason in his situation, right?
Right, it doesn't set any precedent in Colorado, legally binding precedent per se, but, it does set a precedent that it's going to be awfully hard to get a jury to convict a medical patient in Boulder County, at least. I sat through the jury selection process as well, and it was a very sympathetic jury to Jason to begin with. Right off the bat, there were 5 or 6 people that disqualified themselves because they were in favor of full legalization of cannabis and felt that they couldn't be fair and impartial. Now, those were the ones that admitted it to the judge, volunteered it to the judge without being asked. So you can only assume that there were probably some people that had similar feelings that, kept it to themselves. So from the beginning, you could tell that the prosecutor was going to have a much harder time eliminating the jurors that might be pro-cannabis than we were going to have eliminating the jurors that weren't. So. Yeah.
Now, with the prosecution trying to press this as a case of having more medicine than was medically necessary, if you've got if that's the assumption, then you'd have to say that what wasn't medically necessary, it's just for decoration? I mean, did they try to charge you with any sort of sales or intent to distribute or anything like that?
No, they didn't charge them with sales or distribution or even cultivation. So just those 2 possession felonies.
That's really strange to me. I would wonder, why somebody who's in an obvious medical situation like Jason's, where, the severe back pain, nobody would deny that, I'm sure. And to think that they would go after him just for the possession amounts without thinking that he's some sort of drug dealer or anything, that just strikes me as harsh from the prosecution side, or maybe they're trying to set a precedent where they could go after other people. Was there any comment from the prosecution after the case regarding that?
No, they did say over and over again in the press that this was not a test case, as we were accusing them of making this a test case and trying to hold Jason up as an example of what will happen to other patients, if they have more than the 2 ounces and 6 plants that's specifically allowed in the Constitution. So they said it wasn't a test, but it clearly was. I mean, they had 2 prosecutors on the case, hours of investigation, and they just didn't do a very good job of it. The first thing that they didn't do a good job of was pick a good test case, I mean, Jason clearly was in medical need, and he was not abusing the registry as they wanted to make a case for.
So what's next for Jason? He's been acquitted of these charges. I guess he just goes on and lives the life as best he can.
Well, I talked to Jason about that. A really interesting story about what happened at the verdict. We were having our waiting for the verdict to come in down by Boulder Creek, which is right outside the Boulder County Justice Center. So we were sitting in the shade in the trees, and these 2 gentlemen from the THC ministry in Hawaii had just gotten off the plane and come to Colorado to open a ministry in Boulder. and they ended up sitting with us at the vigil while we were waiting for the verdict to come in to Jason, and they came up and introduced themselves, and they said, we're from the THC ministry, we believe that cannabis is a sacrament, and the word Christ means the anointed one, and we would like to anoint you with this oil that we've developed that's based on the formula that we think was used in the Bible. So as they were anointing Jason, the jury verdict literally was coming in, because about a minute after they were done with this anointing ceremony, Jason's phone rang, and it was his attorney calling us back to the courtroom to hear the verdict. So it was quite an interesting experience to have them come all the way from Hawaii to end up with us down by the creek to anoint Jason. And I joked with Jason afterwards. I said, well, Jason, now you're the anointed one. I said, you kept asking us, how can I repay you? How can I help everybody that came to his hearing, and people that wrote letters to the editor, and people that called the district attorney to ask them to drop the charges? He kept saying, I don't know how I can ever thank everybody. And after the verdict was in and we realized, what had happened, I said, well, now you know how you can thank people. You have to be the spokesperson for medical marijuana. You have to stand up for other people that might be in similar situations for you and speak out, because you just got to get out of jail free card for the rest of your life, Jason. I don't think they're going to mess with him anymore for anything. So.
Well, that's good news. It's so many times we cover these trials where it turns out bad for the patients, and it's always great to hear one of these trials where the person's rights have actually been upheld and that the justice system worked out like it should. I want to thank.
Well, this was about as good as we could have imagined it. Not just to have the jury acquit him, but to have the jury acquit him based on the law and their interpretation of the law, which says that a patient can have any amount that's medically necessary. And in addition, they determined that the law doesn't say who gets to determine what's medically necessary. So Jason argued that the patient gets to determine what's medically necessary, and the jury agreed with that argument, because the Constitution is vague in that area and does not say who gets to determine what's medically necessary. So really, you couldn't. We tried to dream up a way that this could have come out better for us, and we really couldn't. So we're quite excited in Boulder County about it.
Wow, that is exciting news, and it's amazing what's happening in Colorado these days with regards to medical marijuana. And you folks down there at Colorado420.com, I'm sure will keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening. And Laura Creho is with Colorado420.com. Encourage everyone to check out the website and give my regards to Jason and thanks for his standing up for this case.
Sure, Russ. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Tokers, this is Radical Russ. There's only one thing I love as much as fine Oregon bud, and that's spicy food so hot it'll peel paint. Thanks to the generous sponsorship of HerbageDesigns.com, I'm putting both my true loves to the test to support the launch of NORML Show Live. It's the El Jefe Chicken Hot Wings Eating Contest Friday, August 28th here in Portland, and the contest benefits the American Red Cross, another favorite charity of mine. You can help. We're signing up pledges for the contest starting as low as 25 cents per wing, up to the 20 wings I'm pledging to eat. You can win, too. The top money entry and a randomly selected entry win Herbage prizes and one of my Starfish Designs Gandalf-style pieces of glass art. Send in your entry to stash@normal.org with the subject Hot Wings Contest and tell me how much you'll pledge per wing, up to 20 wings. Also include your real name, age, and shipping address should you win the prize. Only entries from adults 18 and older will be accepted. Starfish Designs prizes will not be shipped to Idaho, Pennsylvania, or Indiana. The battle to end adult marijuana prohibition can sometimes seem endlessly frustrating and impossible to overcome. One way we bond as a community and draw strength to continue is by rejuvenating our spirit through art and music. The Marijuana Music Awards exist to recognize those sonic artists in all genres of music who feature a ganja-friendly message to motivate and inspire all the cannabis community. Our daily Toker tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, feature the finest in blues, rock, jazz, hip-hop, rap, reggae, country, bluegrass, and dance music to enhance that 420 feeling and refresh all you stashers for another day on the front lines of the drug war. Enjoy this cut from MarijuanaMusicAwards.com and visit our blog at stash.normal.org to learn how you can vote for your favorites and enter your Toker tunes in the 2009 Marijuana Music Awards. It's Rockin' Thursday, and we're listening to Chillin' Rooms by Liverpool band The Boll Weevils. The Boll Weevils started back in the 20th century. During a ganja drought, they developed a new style of roots, blues, rock, and funk. The band say they have broken free from the mono-sound band scene and will take you on a journey through many musical styles. For more on the Boll Weevils, check out myspace.com/thebollweevils. And registered stashers, you can get yourself an MP3 download of this tune. It's Chillin' Rooms by the Boll Weevils.
Take me to the chillin' rooms. Take me to the room chillin'. Take me to the chillin' rooms. Take me to the room chillin'. It all started with a dream I had. I'm gonna grow a skunk farm. I'm gonna have you eating out the palm of my hand. I can see the future. So I asked the judge and I begged him please. He said, you know the law, so get back to your seat. You're gonna be a rebel, so you're getting it hard. Hit him with a fine boy, show him who we are. Who said money doesn't grow on a tree? Make me feel like I shouldn't do it. I think I'll go and buy myself a new Mercedes and let my boys do the business in it. So I'm gonna need a coffee shop or two. Taking over cities, there's a lot to do. I have my critics saying I'm not going far. Hit them with the skunk boy, show them who we are. Who said money doesn't grow on the trees? Make me feel like I shouldn't do it. I think I'll go and buy myself a new Mercedes and let the boys do the business in it. Yeah. Take me to the chillin' room. Take me to the room, chillin'. Take me to the chillin' room. Take me to the room, chillin'. Say what you want, smoke till you drop. Smoke to the top, and you better believe it. Say what you want, smoke till you drop. Smoke to the top, and you better believe it. Say what you want, smoke till you drop. Smoke to the top, and you better believe it. Take me to the chillin' rooms. Take me to the room, chillin'. Take me to the chillin' rooms. Take me to the room, chillin'. Take me to the chillin' rooms. Take me to the room, chillin'. Take me to the chillin' rooms. Take me to the room, chillin'. Take me to the chillin' rooms. Take me to the room.
If I were to tell you that in America, right now, over 1 million children sell marijuana, what would you think? Would you think that any public policy that creates over 1 million teenage marijuana dealers needs to be re-examined and possibly amended? You would not be alone. The members of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, aka NORML, have been working since 1970 to reform marijuana laws such that responsible adults, not children, sell and use marijuana. Isn't it high time to reform America's misguided marijuana laws? This is Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML in Washington, D.C. Only concerned citizens can effectively end the federal government's nearly 70-year-old prohibition on responsible adult marijuana sales and use. Want to know more about how you can help? contact us at NORML, toll free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's popular and informative webpage at NORML, NORML.org.
Legalization, decriminalization, lowest law enforcement priority, medical marijuana, ganja sacrament, consumer cannabis, industrial hemp. The world of marijuana law reform involves many different aspects of cannabis that intersect nearly every public policy discussion in America, including healthcare, the economy, global climate change, law enforcement and prisons, immigration, religion, free speech, energy policy, and war. Now we take a look at how re-legalizing marijuana will change the world in our NORML daily audio stash, Cannabis Conversations. We're speaking today with Dr. Harry Levine from New York City, and he has recently posted an article up on alternate.org. It's entitled The Epidemic of Pot Arrests in New York City, and a lot of people don't realize New York City is the pot arrest capital of the world. Dr. Levine, thanks for joining us here.
Very nice to be here.
Now, this is always an interesting subject when I bring it up to people and I tell them that New York City is the pot arrest capital, because they come back and they say, well, isn't marijuana decriminalized in New York State? Tell our listeners about that strange seeming dichotomy.
Yeah, well, there are indeed two important things to understand about marijuana arrests in New York City. First, since 1977, for over 30 years, marijuana has been formally, officially, legally decriminalized in the state of New York. New York State passed the Marijuana Reform Act in 1977, making possession of 25 grams or less, about 7/8 of an ounce or less, not a crime. It is, according to New York State law, and has been so for decades, it is a violation, like a traffic violation, like going through a stop sign. One can be given a ticket and fined $100 for possessing marijuana, but not arrested and fingerprinted and jailed and so on. This has been state law. And the second thing is that New York City, despite this law, has since 1977 been arresting an average about 36,000 people a year, and everybody arrested is handcuffed, brought to the police station, fingerprinted, photographed, jailed, spends a horrible night in jails, and winds up with a permanent and eradicable criminal justice record, which then counts against jobs and schooling and housing and all kinds of stuff. And this rolls on. So yes, both things are true. In New York State, marijuana is formally, legally decriminalized, and in New York City, we are making history-breaking, record-breaking levels of marijuana arrests.
Well, how does the New York Police Department then, how are they able to make these tens of thousands of arrests if it's a decriminalized substance?
Well, that's the sort of the $64 question, as they say. You know, how do they do it? Are these arrests illegal? Which might appear to be the case at first glance. And the answer is yes and no. Yes, in some cases the cops do actually just illegally search people, put their hands in people's pockets, and there's nobody around. They stop people on the street and pat them down. And in the course of the patting down, they'll go in their pockets, especially narcotics police. But that's probably a minority of the arrests. And the arrests also certainly violate the spirit and the intent of the law, which was very much not to criminalize the overwhelmingly young people. Mostly people who are arrested are under 25 years of age or under, and most of them teenagers and young adults. The whole purpose of it. So it certainly violates the intent of the law. However, the cops have gotten very good at figuring out how to turn something into a technically legal arrest. And by and large, this is the way they can do it. They can thoroughly stop people and pat them down. New York City made 500,000 police stop and frisk in 2008. 500,000 stop and frisk. And in the course of that, they can pat people down but they can't go in their pockets. However, police are allowed to mislead people, trick people, and to make false statements to them. They can say things to people that aren't true. So what the officers will do, and again, it's very important to understand that this is not individual officers doing this on their own. They are, or nobody can make 36,000 arrests, because of rogue cops. These are ordered by commanders all the way up the food chain. It really originates at the absolute top levels of the New York City Police Department. We've had 3 police chiefs and 2 mayors who have done this. So this is not cops taking this into their own head to do this. And what they will say to people is they can say things that aren't true. So they can say, we're going to have to search you and go through all your pockets and belongings. Now, technically, they're not legally allowed to do that, but they are legally allowed to tell people they're going to do that. So they will say, we're going to have to search your pockets and go through your pockets. So if you've got anything you're not supposed to have, and they like that phrase, not supposed to have, anything you're not supposed to have, take it out and show it to us now. If it's not much, if we go through your pockets and we find stuff, then we're going to have to arrest you and you're going to have to spend a night in jail and it's going to be a mess. But if you take it out and show it to us, maybe we'll see that it's not much at all, and maybe we can just give you a ticket, or maybe if you just have a little bit of pot, we can let you go. So if you've got anything you're not supposed to have, take it out and show it to us now, in their very commanding, authoritative voice. And at that point, confronted with 1 or 2 or more cops with, guns and nightsticks and mace and the whole thing, most teenagers and young adults will go into their pocket or a backpack or whatever and take out their nickel bag or dime bag or joint or whatever and hold it out and hand it over to the cops. Now, this is where the problem happens, which is, according to New York State law, as long as the marijuana is in your pocket or backpack or shoe or whatever, it's not a crime. It's a violation. But once it is, quote, open to public view, once it is out in the open, even if it's a little bit, technically, formally, that's a crime. And so on the basis of that, the cops can bust people. And when the teenagers take out their marijuana and show it to the cops, at that point, they clamp the handcuffs on, take them in the squad car, and people say, but, you said, but, and the police will say, well, yes, it was too much, or, we didn't realize you had that, whatever. Right. And so, yeah, the arrests happen in that way, and that makes these things technically legal. Legal aid attorneys, have, deal with these, we deal with 100 of these cases, a day, 700 a week, several thousand a month, and they're often good and hardworking and dedicated, but the facts of the case and technicalities of the law are such that the police can do this.
Well, it seems to me like that would take a lot of officer time and a lot of money to do this. So how do they justify the money expense? Doesn't this cost the state?
Because nobody, they are, the police are extraordinarily adept, skillful, with vast resources to do so, at essentially controlling the information that the media prints about them. They're much more than anybody understands. The media really serves the police department in many, many ways. They're intimidated by the police, for very sort of, cold business reasons. A lot of the information that major newspapers, and this is true in every city in America, and the TV stations get that they use is from the police department. It bleeds, it leads, is more than ever the watchstone of the local press. So they're not gonna muck with the press and with the police department, and police in many places, and in New York, they're really vicious about it, will punish outlets that start reporting things that they don't want reported. So police departments don't mind it if the media investigates bad apples, a corrupt cop, a corrupt squad, a team, those kinds of things. Fine, they're happy to throw individual officers or units to the dogs. But what they're doing every day, day in and day out, they don't want the media to talk about that, and so the media don't, and so almost nobody knows this is going on.
Now, what's the upside for the police departments here? I mean, just rounding up people to be able to get their records or their fingerprints, or what's their motivation?
Right. Well, I answer the second part of the other part of your question, which is, so they don't have to justify the expense of these things to anybody because nobody's asking them about it. And when they're asked about it, they basically deny this is going on, and change the subject very adeptly. So even if pushed, somebody sticks a microphone in front of Paul J. Brown, who's the police department official spokesperson for everything, he will say, well, they used to be high, but they're not so high now, and then next question. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? Well, I've been interviewing lots of police. I've interviewed, I've been to a couple of national black police conferences, prosecutors, public defenders, people arrested, and so on. And the story of what's going on with this is an interesting, subtle and tricky one. The policy begins with Giuliani, who had his own reasons for doing almost anything. But he had a new police chief named Safer, who had formerly worked for the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration. And Giuliani and Safer appear to have cooked this up together. Now, Bloomberg comes in 2002. We've had 2001. You would think that, Bloomberg, the perception of Bloomberg is he's more liberal, more moderate. He was known to have smoked marijuana. And 9/11 had happened, so you would think there was more important things for the police to do. But this thing rolls on merrily, nonetheless. And by now, Bloomberg has made more of these arrests than Giuliani did. So now part of the story of Bloomberg is he lets the police department do what they want. Raymond Kelly, his police chief. And that there are, I have basically concluded, significant constituencies within the police department that benefit from the arrests, or even that you might say that like the arrest. Well, who likes the arrest? Well, ordinary patrol and narcotics cops actually like making the marijuana arrests, or at least some of them do, because they're safe. Policing can be a dangerous job. They're relatively easy. It's easy to find people with a small amount of marijuana in their pocket. It's the most likely thing that some teenager or young adult is going to have in their pocket that can get them arrested. Marijuana arrestees are relatively high up on the food chain of arrestees. The police deal with a lot of people, especially drug squads, with people who may be junkies, who may have various diseases. They may be sort of homeless and they can be smell. They may have TB or hepatitis or AIDS. Marijuana users generally don't have any of those problems, and when somebody arrests somebody, they actually, as one officer put it, married to somebody for a number of hours. You're in close contact. You're physically touching them. They're in your car. You have to fingerprint them and touch them. The officers often accompany people to the police station. So marijuana arrestees are high quality. They're clean, as one officer put it, meaning physically clean. They're not smelly or dirty. They're relatively pleasant people to spend a few hours with in some cases. Secondly, the patrol and narcotics cops are under enormous pressure to produce stats, which count for whether you can get promotions, choice assignments, and so on. And again, marijuana arrests are relatively easy to do. This also is true for supervisors and all the way up the department hierarchy. Another thing is that ordinary cops of New York City are very low paid, but they can get some overtime. But there are very limited ways to get overtime, and the basic way to get overtime is you make an arrest toward the end of your shift, and then you have to process that person. You have to do the fingerprinting and the booking, and sometimes take them down to the jail. So you can get 3 or 4 hours of overtime. So toward the end of a shift, they'll go around and do some stop and frisks in a likely neighborhood, looking for somebody who might have a bit of pot in their pocket, and then they get overtime. Not only do the individual cops get overtime, again, patrol narcotics, but their supervisors will get overtime as well. Supervisors like the arrest. Why do supervisors like the arrest? Well, the number one problem for police supervisors at every level, right from the precinct house, squad commander, all the way up the food chain, is where are my cops now and what are they doing? And they're out making these low-level arrests of any kind, including marijuana arrests. They're keeping busy. There are records. They're writing down where they are and what they're doing. So they're not, they're less likely to get in trouble. They're less likely to hurt somebody. They're less likely to get hurt themselves, and you know where they are. And then there's another thing, which is that some hunk of these arrests, nobody, there's no official numbers that I've been able to get, are done by narcotic squads, maybe half. And the narcotic squads go out hunting for anybody possessing stuff. Now, one of the handy things about narcotic squads, which have blossomed in sort of from the mid-90s on, and especially from 97 on, large numbers, is that something big comes up. There's a crisis. There's an emergency. There's a bombing. There's the president's in town. There's something at the UN. You need extra police, and you can pull them off of these low-level narcotic squads with no crime, no ongoing investigation. Nothing bad happens, and nobody knows about it. So they can be deployed and sent someplace else, and then when the crisis or problem or whatever event is over, they can be sent back to do whatever they do. So it turns out that narcotics cops give the police department a kind of surplus force that they can use, which is very handy for the top brass of the police department. And then finally, the police department likes the marijuana arrests for the same reason that police departments all over America like records. There's really a push that starts with the federal government, goes to state governments and down to county and local governments to get as many people as possible, quote, into the system, meaning get fingerprints, names and addresses, phone numbers, photographs, and in some cases, like California right now, DNA. There's nothing that the police can do that gets as many new people into the system as the broad net of marijuana arrests. So there's all kinds of reasons internal to police departments why they might make lots of these arrests and receive various constituencies receive benefits from it, and without them wanting to talk about it. So they don't stand in front of charts showing the rising number of marijuana arrests they're making. They will often deny what's going on. And then one more thing, which is really important for your listeners to understand and for normal people to understand, is that what's happening in New York is happening in lots of other cities. New York is extreme because it's so big in the number of arrests it's making, but lots of other cities are also arresting and even jailing people for possessing small amounts of money and making the arrests in much the same trickery way that New York is doing it. Atlanta is making lots of these. Baltimore is making lots of these things. Indianapolis is making. Cleveland, San Antonio, Dallas, Phoenix. I mean, it goes, sort of all Denver, across the country in all kinds of ways. And a lot of the same processes that are going on in New York, and a lot of the same things are going on in all those other places. Plus one other kicker. And this is one that has not just got enough attention yet and needs to, which is the federal government, the United States federal government, to some extent, subsidizes these arrests through a grant program called the Byrne Grants, B-Y-R-N-E, Byrne Grant Program. And Byrne Grants send up to about $1 billion a year to prosecutors and police departments to fight the war on drugs and fight crime. And the Byrne Grant Program is now, in 2008, in 2009, up to the highest level of funding it's ever been, which is about $1 billion. And the stimulus package that passed by Congress in 2009 added an additional $2 billion. So there is now more money going to police departments for the Byrne Grant Program than has ever been before. And some of that money is being used to make these marijuana arrests, or more precisely, the marijuana arrests are being used to justify productivity when they submit status sort of reports on the grants to show that they've been using the money effectively. So they write how many drug arrests they make, but probably half or more of the drug arrests they're making are basically pissant marijuana possession arrests. So this is really an issue which could be approached nationally. And you don't even need Congress to do it. The Justice Department could actually change the regulations to say that these federal Byrne Grant monies can't be used by police departments to make low-level marijuana arrests. But at the moment, there's very little political pressure around anything like this. Burn grants are very popular among congressmen, both Democrats and Republicans, but especially Democrats who often sort of feel the influence of the big city police departments in their districts and precincts. Both Obama and Joe Biden were, as senators, big fans of burn grants, as is every single member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I'm looking forward to, in the next year or so, digging up some more on this and talking about this more. I know that both Alan and Keith at NORML are intensely aware of the importance of burn grants about this stuff, and that it's very important to me, it seems to me, activity for activism around these marijuana arrests.
Mm-hmm. Well, you had mentioned earlier something about the police going to the neighborhoods where they could arrest people, and this question, boy, it almost doesn't need to be asked, but I'm betting those neighborhoods aren't the Upper East Side, right?
Yeah, this is another very important part of the story here, which is in New York City and every single major city in America and minor cities and small towns and counties and so on, blacks and Latinos, teenagers and young adults, are disproportionately arrested for possessing small amounts of marijuana, by and large low income. So what they're doing is police are sent, heavily, overwhelmingly, to what are called, quote, high crime neighborhoods, which tend to be low income neighborhoods. And in just about every major city in America, those are disproportionately black and Latino. And it's in those neighborhoods that they do lots of stop and frisk. Essentially, they're looking for guns or something. But in the course of that, they will do this one version or another of trickery or an illegal search or something to produce a small amount of marijuana. And the same rules apply in all those places. So yeah, I mean, by and large, Latinos are probably being arrested at 3 or more times the rate of whites in most places in the United States. And blacks are being arrested at 5 or more times the rate of whites. In 2008, New York City arrested blacks at 7 times the rate. You get some smaller places where they're being arrested at 10 times the rate of whites. This is a scandal. It's shocking, and I think it's really a thing that NORML and marijuana, anybody interested in marijuana reform, should talk about as much as possible, because there are allies that we can find and make to be able to call attention to and hopefully to stop these god-awful arrests.
Yeah. I encourage everyone to check out the piece that you've written up there. It's called The Epidemic of Pot Arrests in New York City. It's up at alternet.org by Dr. Harry G. Levine, and you're at Queens College, is that correct?
Queens College, City University of New York. And you can just find it if you just go to Google or Google News.
Yeah.
And type in The Epidemic of Pot Arrests in New York. Google will take you right there.
All right. Thank you for joining us here on The Stash and making such a great presentation on these statistics.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy, and web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with reminders that it's just 48 hours or less until Seattle Hemp Fest. I'm leaving town tomorrow around 6 p.m. Pacific time, so the stash will be uploaded early for tomorrow. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter. It's Radical Russ at the Twitter website, twitter.com. Because even though I've posted the times that I'll be speaking, HempFest is kind of a fluid and dynamic event, so when there's updates, I'll be posting them via Twitter. Also, I'll be posting pictures from on stage, backstage, and all around Seattle HempFest through the Twitter account using TwitPic. So check it out now, follow me while you can, and we'll all have fun at HempFest, even if you can't be there. I'll be sure to smoke one for you, or 2, or 3, or however many. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.